In the quiet emptiness of deep space, the Starship Odyssey drifted silently through the void. Its mission was simple: explore uncharted regions of the galaxy and search for signs of ancient life. Commander Jack Miller stood on the bridge, staring out at the endless sea of stars. He was a calm man, known for his steady decisions, but today he felt uneasy. Something about this part of space felt different. Too quiet, too still. "Commander," called out pilot Sophie Bennett, breaking the silence. Her voice carried just a hint of excitement. "We've picked up something unusual on the scanners. It's not natural." Jack turned to face her. "What is it?" "It's big," Sophie replied, tapping a few commands into her console. "About 5 kilometers wide, drifting near that dying star ahead. No engines, no energy signatures, just there." The crew gathered around as Sophie brought up an image on the main screen. What they saw took their breath away. The object looked like a massive structure, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shimmer faintly under the weak light of the distant star. It was ancient, clearly abandoned for thousands, if not millions, of years. But what caught everyone's attention were the symbols etched into its surface. They weren't random. They formed patterns and shapes, almost like writing. Archaeologist Laura Hayes stepped forward, her eyes wide with wonder. "Those markings, they're not from any known language. Whoever built this must have been incredibly advanced." Engineer Ryan Cole frowned. "Or incredibly dangerous. Do we really want to mess with something this old? You don't leave things floating in space unless you're trying to warn people away." Jack ignored Ryan's skepticism. This was exactly why they were here, to uncover mysteries, not shy away from them. "Sophie, take us closer." "Laura, suit up. We're going to check it out." As the Odyssey approached, the structure loomed larger, its sheer size making the ship feel tiny by comparison. When the airlock opened, Jack led the team onto the surface of the artifact. The ground beneath their boots was cold and metallic, vibrating faintly as if alive. Laura knelt down, running her gloved fingers over the carvings. She pulled out a scanner and began analyzing the symbols. "These aren't just decorations," she said after a moment. "They're warnings. Different languages, all saying the same thing: never awaken them." Ryan crossed his arms. "Awaken who? And why does every alien race we meet always leave creepy messages like this?" Jack didn't answer. His focus was on the entrance, a dark opening leading deeper into the structure. "Let's find out," he said firmly. "Stay sharp, everyone." Inside, the air grew colder and the walls seemed to hum softly. Laura's scanner lit up as she moved further in, revealing more symbols glowing faintly along the corridor. Each one reinforced the same chilling message: never awaken them. Despite the growing unease among the team, curiosity pushed them onward. Finally, they'd reached a large chamber filled with strange devices and holographic displays frozen mid-projection. Laura touched one, and it flickered to life, showing images of planets and civilizations long gone. Every scene ended the same way, with destruction. One civilization after another had vanished, leaving behind only warnings. "This isn't just a monument," Laura whispered. "It's a warning beacon. These species discovered Earth, and then they disappeared." Ryan shook his head. "So, what? Are we supposed to believe there's something sleeping on Earth that wiped out entire galactic empires?" No one answered. Instead, they stared at the holograms, each member of the team feeling the weight of what they'd found. Whatever this place was, it wasn't meant to be disturbed. But now that they'd seen it, turning back wouldn't be easy. Jack glanced at his team. "We need to figure out what this is, and fast, before someone else makes the same mistake." Inside the ancient structure, the team moved cautiously through dimly lit corridors. The air felt heavier with each step, and the faint hum of the walls grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. Laura Hayes stayed close to the glowing symbols, her scanner working overtime to decode their meaning. Each new carving reinforced the same dire warning: never awaken them. But what or who were them? The chamber they had entered was vast, filled with towering machines that looked both alien and oddly familiar. Holographic projections flickered above strange consoles, showing scenes from civilizations long extinct. Jack Miller watched as one projection displayed a planet being consumed by shadowy figures. The images shifted rapidly, depicting different worlds, all ending in ruin. It was as if the structure was a library, storing the final moments of countless species. "These aren't just records," Laura said, her voice trembling slightly. "They're warnings. Every civilization that came here learned something terrible about Earth, and then they vanished." Sophie Bennett, standing nearby, shivered despite her suit's temperature control. "Do you think they're talking about us, humans?" Laura hesitated before answering. "Maybe. Or maybe it's something older than humanity, something buried deep beneath the surface of our planet." Ryan Cole, ever the skeptic, crossed his arms. "This is insane. We're supposed to believe there's some ancient evil sleeping under Earth, waiting for us to trip over it. Sounds like a bad horror movie." Jack shot him a sharp look. "We can't ignore this, Ryan. Too many advanced civilizations left these messages. They didn't do it for fun." As they explored further, Laura noticed a central console in the middle of the chamber. It was covered in more symbols, but unlike the others, these glowed brighter, almost invitingly. She knelt down and placed her scanner against it. Instantly, the room came alive. Lights pulsed along the walls, and holograms erupted around them, showing detailed maps of Earth. Each map highlighted specific locations, deep beneath oceans, hidden within mountains, and buried under deserts. "What are those spots?" Sophie asked, pointing at one of the glowing markers on the map. "I don't know," Laura admitted, "but I think they're connected to whatever the warnings are about." Jack leaned closer, studying the maps. "If we want answers, we need to take samples of this technology back to Earth. Maybe Dr. Emily Ross can make sense of it." Ryan groaned. "You really think bringing alien tech home is a good idea? Everything we've seen so far says the opposite." "We can't just leave it here," Jack replied firmly. "If there's even a chance this could help us understand what's going on, we have to try." Reluctantly, the team began collecting fragments of the glowing symbols and pieces of the machinery. As they worked, Sophie started to feel uneasy. Her head ached, and she kept hearing faint whispers, though no one else seemed to notice. At first, she thought it was just her imagination, but the voices grew clearer, speaking in a language she couldn't understand yet somehow felt familiar. "Did anyone else hear that?" she asked nervously. "Hear what?" Jack asked, looking up from the console. "Just voices, like they're coming from inside my head." Laura paused, glancing at Sophie with concern. "It might be the structure. Some ancient tech can affect the mind. Try to focus, Sophie. We need to finish this." By the time they were done, the chamber felt oppressive, as though the shadows themselves were closing in. Jack gave the order to return to the Odyssey, but as they exited the structure, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that they had awakened something, not physically, but perhaps in some other way. The whispers followed her all the way back to the ship, growing louder and more insistent. Once aboard, Ryan immediately voiced his concerns. That thing wasn't just a relic. It was alive, or at least part of it was. You saw how it reacted when Laura touched the console. Jack nodded. "I know. But we're past the point of turning back now. Whatever secrets this tech holds, we'll figure it out on Earth." As the Odyssey prepared to leave, none of them noticed the faint glow emanating from the artifact fragments stored in the cargo bay. Nor did they hear the soft, rhythmic chanting that seemed to echo through the ship's metal walls. For now, the mission was over, but the real nightmare was only beginning. Back on Earth, the fragments of alien technology were taken to a high-security research facility buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. Dr. Emily Ross, a brilliant but cautious scientist, led the team tasked with analyzing the artifacts. From the moment the pieces arrived, she felt a strange unease. The fragments glowed faintly, pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Despite her reservations, orders from above insisted they proceed quickly, too quickly for her liking. "This feels wrong," Emily muttered to herself as she examined one of the glowing symbols under a microscope. Her assistant, Daniel, nodded in agreement. "It's like they're watching us," he said, glancing nervously at the artifact. "Do you think the warnings were real? About not awakening, whatever it is?" Emily sighed. "I don't know. But if there's even a chance this tech can help humanity, we have to try. Just be careful, okay?" The team worked tirelessly, running tests and decoding the symbols etched into the fragments. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The symbols weren't just warnings. They were instructions. Laura Hayes, who had accompanied the artifacts back to Earth, explained her findings to Emily. "These aren't random carvings," Laura said, pointing to a series of glowing lines on a tablet. "They're part of a sequence. If we follow them, we might activate something." "What kind of something?" Emily asked, her voice tight with concern. Laura hesitated. "It could be a failsafe, or it could be something else entirely. We won't know until we try." Against her better judgment, Emily gave the go-ahead to attempt activation. The team assembled in the lab, surrounding the largest fragment, a jagged piece of metal covered in intricate designs. As Laura input the sequence, the room grew colder, and the hum of the artifact grew louder. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sudden flash of light, the fragment came to life. At first, it seemed harmless. Holographic projections filled the room, showing detailed maps of Earth overlaid with glowing markers. But then the ground beneath the facility began to tremble. Alarms blared as seismic readings spiked across the globe. Fissures opened in the earth, releasing plumes of smoke and revealing ancient structures buried miles below the surface. "What have we done?" Daniel whispered, his face pale. Emily stared at the projections in horror. "We didn't activate a failsafe. We triggered something far worse." As chaos erupted outside, reports flooded in from around the world. Cities near the fissures reported strange sightings, shadowy figures moving with unnatural speed, leaving destruction in their wake. Governments scrambled to respond, but conventional weapons proved useless against the entities. Panic spread as people realized these beings weren't invaders. They were native to Earth, awakened by humanity's interference. Meanwhile, Jack Miller and his crew watched helplessly from orbit aboard the Odyssey. They had returned to Earth hoping to assist with the analysis, only to find themselves witnessing the catastrophic consequences of their discovery. Sophie Bennett sat silently in the cockpit, her hands trembling as the whispers in her mind grew louder and more urgent. "We have to do something," Jack said, pacing the bridge. "This isn't just our problem. It's global." Ryan Cole shook his head. "It's too late for that. Whatever those things are, they're already loose. All we can do now is survive." Laura approached Emily via secure communication, pleading with her to shut down the artifact. "You need to deactivate it," Laura urged. "If you don't, this will only get worse." Emily nodded grimly. "We're trying. But it's not responding. It's like it has a mind of its own now." As the situation spiraled out of control, the weight of their actions settled heavily on everyone involved. What had started as a mission of discovery had become a fight for survival. The warnings had been clear, yet ignored. Now, the entire planet would pay the price. The fissures in the earth continued to spread, splitting continents and swallowing cities whole. From the cracks emerged towering spires of black stone, ancient structures that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. These weren't ruins. They were prisons, and humanity had just opened the locks. Dr. Emily Ross stood in the lab, her face pale as she watched live footage of the chaos unfolding across the globe. Shadowy figures moved through the streets, their forms shifting and twisting unnaturally. They didn't attack randomly. They sought out fear, feeding on panic and despair. Entire populations were driven mad within hours, their screams echoing until silence fell over what was once thriving cities. "We need to shut this down," Daniel said, his voice trembling as he stared at the glowing artifact. "If we don't stop whatever's powering this, it'll keep spreading." Emily clenched her fists. "I've tried everything. It won't deactivate. This thing, it's not just a machine. It's alive." Laura Hayes stepped forward, her expression grim. "Then maybe we're going about this the wrong way. The warnings never said not to use the artifact. They said not to awaken them. We need to focus on containing the entities, not the device." Jack Miller and his crew joined the conversation via video link from the Odyssey. Jack looked exhausted, but his voice remained steady. "What do you propose? Because right now, Earth is falling apart." Sophie spoke up, her tone hesitant. "The dreams, the voices, they've been getting clearer. They're not just noise. They're trying to tell me something. I think they want us to go back to where we found the structure." Ryan Cole frowned. "You mean fly all the way back to that derelict thing floating near the dying star? That could take days, assuming we even survive long enough to get there." "It's our only shot," Sophie insisted. "Whatever woke those things came from that structure. Maybe there's a way to undo it." Emily nodded slowly. "She's right. If we can find the source of the signal or the mechanism that triggered this, we might be able to reverse it." With no other options, Jack gave the order to return to the derelict structure. The journey would be dangerous, not only because of the time it would take, but also because Earth's atmosphere was becoming increasingly unstable. Strange weather patterns raged across the planet, and the shadowy entities showed no signs of stopping. As the Odyssey prepared for departure, Emily and her team worked frantically to gather data. They loaded every piece of information they had onto portable drives, hoping it might help them understand how to contain the threat. Before leaving, Emily recorded a final message to whoever might survive after them. "Humanity made a grave mistake," she began, her voice heavy with regret. "We ignored warnings left by countless civilizations, believing ourselves smarter, stronger. But we weren't. Whatever lies beneath the surface of our world is older than time itself, and far more powerful. If anyone finds this, please remember, some secrets are meant to stay buried." Back aboard the Odyssey, the mood was somber. Each member of the crew knew the odds of success were slim. Yet, despite the fear gnawing at them, they pressed on. As the ship left Earth's orbit, they watched the planet grow smaller in the viewport, its surface scared and burning, its skies choked with ash. Sophie sat quietly in the cockpit, clutching her head as the whispers grew louder. She wasn't sure if they were guiding her or mocking her. Either way, she couldn't ignore them anymore. Hours turned into days as the Odyssey raced toward the derelict structure. When it finally came into view, the team felt a mix of dread and determination. This place had started it all. Now it might hold the key to ending it, or ensuring humanity's destruction. The Odyssey approached the derelict structure, its surface still shimmering faintly under the weak light of the dying star. The closer they got, the heavier the air seemed to grow inside the ship. Sophie Bennett sat in the cockpit, her hands gripping the controls tightly. The whispers in her mind were louder now, almost deafening. She could feel them pressing against her thoughts, urging her forward. "This place feels wrong," Ryan Cole muttered as the team gathered in the airlock, preparing to disembark. "Like it knows we're here." Jack Miller nodded but didn't respond. He knew Ryan was right, but they had no choice. Earth was falling apart, and this structure was their only hope of undoing the damage. With a deep breath, he led the team onto the cold, metallic surface of the artifact. Inside, the corridors felt darker than before, as if the structure itself had changed since their last visit. The walls hummed with an unsettling rhythm, matching the pulsing glow of the symbols etched into the metal. Laura Hayes moved quickly, her scanner lighting up as she tried to retrace their steps to the central chamber. "We need to find the console we activated," Laura said, her voice echoing through the empty halls. "If we can reverse the sequence, maybe we can shut it down." Sophie stopped suddenly, her head snapping toward a nearby wall. Her eyes widened as she stared at the glowing symbols. "It's calling me," she whispered, her voice trembling. I think it wants me to touch it." "No," Jack barked, grabbing her arm. "We don't know what will happen." But Sophie pulled free, her expression distant. "I have to. It's showing me something, a way to fix this." Before anyone could stop her, she pressed her hand against the glowing symbol. The room erupted in light, and the hum grew into a deafening roar. Holographic projections filled the chamber, showing scenes of Earth, but not the Earth they knew. This version was ancient, covered in sprawling cities made of black stone. Shadowy figures moved freely across the surface, their forms fluid and unnatural. Then, one by one, the cities sank into the ground, sealed away beneath layers of rock and metal. "They weren't invaders," Sophie said softly, her voice filled with awe. "They were always here. The civilizations that left the warnings, they imprisoned these things, and we set them free." Ryan shook his head, his face pale. "So what do we do? How do we put them back?" Laura studied the console, her fingers flying over the controls. "There has to be a failsafe, something to reactivate the prison." As she worked, the structure began to tremble. The lights flickered, and the temperature dropped sharply. From the shadows, dark shapes started to emerge, twisting, writhing forms that seemed to pulse with malice. "They're here," Daniel said over the comms from Earth, his voice cracking with fear. "The entities, they'd found us." Jack turned to Ryan. "We need more time. Can you hold them off?" Ryan hesitated, then nodded. "I'll do what I can." He grabbed a plasma cutter from his belt and moved to guard the entrance, firing bursts of energy at the encroaching shadows. For now, the light kept them at bay, but it wouldn't last long. Inside the chamber, Laura and Sophie worked frantically, trying to decipher the alien controls. "There," Laura shouted, pointing to a sequence on the console. "If we trigger this, it might collapse the structure and seal the fissures. But it'll destroy the artifact too," Sophie said, her voice hollow. "And everything inside it." "It's the only way," Jack replied firmly. "Do it." As Laura initiated the sequence, the structure shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and the walls began to crack. The shadowy figures surged forward, drawn by the chaos. Ryan fought valiantly, but the creatures were relentless. "Go," he yelled, backing toward the chamber. "I'll hold them off." Jack hesitated, torn between staying and leaving. But there was no time to argue. Grabbing Sophie and Laura, he dragged them toward the exit. Behind them, Ryan stood his ground, firing until the shadows overwhelmed him. His final words echoed through the comms. "Tell Earth, we tried." Back on the Odyssey, the team watched in silence as the structure collapsed into itself, consumed by a blinding explosion. The fissures on Earth began to close, and the shadowy figures retreated into the depths once more. For now, the planet was safe, but the cost had been high. As the ship drifted away, Sophie closed her eyes, the whispers finally gone. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows weren't truly defeated. They were waiting, and someday they might rise again. The Odyssey hovered in the void, its crew silent, as they watched the derelict structure collapse into itself. The explosion lit up the darkness like a dying star, sending shockwaves rippling through space. For a moment, there was only silence. No alarms, no trembling walls, no whispers. Then, slowly, Earth's surface began to stabilize. The fissures closed, and the shadowy entities retreated back into the depths, their forms dissolving into nothingness. But the victory felt hollow. Ryan Cole was gone, sacrificed to buy them precious minutes. His final words echoed in their minds. "Tell Earth, we tried." Jack Miller clenched his fists, his jaw tight with grief and guilt. He had made the call to leave Ryan behind, and though it had been necessary, it didn't make the weight of it any easier to bear. "We did what we had to do," Sophie Bennett said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice was raw, her eyes red from crying. He knew the risks. Jack nodded but didn't respond. Instead, he turned his attention to Laura Hayes, who was reviewing the data they had gathered before leaving the structure. "Did we stop them for good?" he asked, his tone heavy with doubt. Laura hesitated, her expression grim. "I don't know. The prison is sealed. For now. But those things, they're part of Earth. We didn't destroy them. We just pushed them back." Sophie shuddered at the thought. "They were here before us. They'll probably still be here long after we're gone." The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None of them wanted to say it aloud, but they all felt the same dread. This wasn't over. The entities might be trapped again, but history had shown that prisons could be broken. And humanity's curiosity was relentless. Back on Earth, Dr. Emily Ross and her team monitored the situation closely. The seismic activity had subsided, and the shadowy figures had vanished, leaving behind only ruins and ash. Cities lay in ruins, their streets empty and silent. Survivors wandered aimlessly, their faces blank with trauma. The world would never be the same. Emily stared at the screens displaying the data from the Odyssey. Despite everything, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had only delayed the inevitable. "We need to prepare," she said to Daniel, who stood nearby. "If they ever break free again, we can't be caught off guard." Daniel nodded, though his expression was grim. "Do you think anyone will listen? Governments are already scrambling to cover this up. Most people won't even believe what happened." "They'll have to," Emily replied firmly. "Because next time, there might not be a way to stop them." On board the Odyssey, the crew prepared for the long journey back to Earth. None of them spoke much, each lost in their own thoughts. Sophie sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the stars. The whispers were gone, but their absence left an eerie quiet inside her mind. She wondered if the entities were truly contained, or if they were simply waiting, biding their time. Laura approached her cautiously, sitting down beside her. "You okay?" Sophie shook her head. "No. I keep thinking about what those things showed me. The cities, the shadows. They weren't invaders. They belonged here. We're the ones who woke them up." Laura sighed. "Maybe, but we also put them back. That has to count for something." "Does it?" Sophie whispered. "What if we're just postponing the end?" Jack entered the cockpit, interrupting their conversation. "We've done all we can for now," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sadness. "It's up to Earth to decide what happens next. All we can do is warn them." As the Odyssey turned toward home, the crew shared a moment of quiet reflection. They had saved the planet, but at a cost. Ryan's sacrifice weighed heavily on them, a reminder of how fragile life was in the face of forces beyond comprehension. When they finally reached Earth, the planet was a shadow of its former self. The skies were gray, and the air carried the scent of smoke and decay. As they stepped off the ship, they were greeted by survivors, men, women, and children whose eyes held a mixture of hope and despair. Jack took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "We stopped them," he told the crowd, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "But they're still out there, buried deep beneath the surface. If we forget that, if we ignore the warnings, they'll come back. And next time, we might not be so lucky." The crowd fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Humanity had survived, but the scars would remain forever. Somewhere deep below the ground, the shadows stirred faintly, their presence a constant reminder that peace was fleeting, and that some secrets should never be disturbed. Months passed since the Odyssey returned to Earth, but the scars of what had happened remained etched into the planet and its people. The fissures had closed, and the shadowy entities were gone, buried once more beneath layers of rock and time. Yet, no one could shake the feeling that they were still there, waiting. The world had changed forever, and humanity now lived under the shadow of its own mistakes. Dr. Emily Ross spent her days in a makeshift lab. analyzing every piece of data recovered from the derelict structure. She worked tirelessly, driven by guilt and fear. "We can't let this happen again," she often muttered to herself. Her assistant, Daniel, stayed by her side, helping her compile reports and warnings for future generations. Together, they created a detailed archive, maps of the fissures, recordings of the events, and translations of the alien symbols. It was their way of ensuring that no one would forget. Meanwhile, Jack Miller and his surviving crew became reluctant heroes. Their story spread across the globe, though many refused to believe it. Governments tried to suppress the truth, labeling it as mass hysteria or a natural disaster. But those who had seen the shadows with their own eyes knew better. They carried the burden of knowledge, haunted by the memories of what they had unleashed and stopped. Sophie Bennett struggled the most. The whispers were gone, but their absence left an emptiness inside her. She couldn't sleep without seeing visions of the shadowy figures, their forms twisting and writhing in the dark. Laura Hayes stayed close to her, offering support whenever she could. "It's over," Laura would say gently. "You did your part." But Sophie wasn't so sure. "They're still down there," she whispered one night, staring out at the horizon. "I can feel it. And someday, someone else will make the same mistake we did." Jack shared her unease. He often found himself standing on the edge of the largest fissure, now sealed over with concrete and steel. It was a monument to humanity's hubris, a reminder of how close they had come to destruction. He knew the world wouldn't stay quiet forever. Curiosity was a powerful force, and sooner or later, someone would dig too deep. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack gathered the remaining crew together. They stood in silence, looking out at the scared landscape. "We did everything we could," he said finally, his voice heavy with emotion. "But this isn't the end. It's just a pause." Ryan Cole's name hung unspoken in the air. His sacrifice weighed heavily on all of them, a constant reminder of the price they had paid. "He saved us," Sophie said softly, tears streaming down her face. "He gave us a chance to fix things." Laura nodded. "And we have to honor that, by making sure no one else makes the same mistake." As the weeks turned into months, the crew went their separate ways, each carrying the weight of what they had witnessed. Jack returned to space exploration, determined to ensure humanity learned from its errors. Sophie retreated to a quiet life, writing journals filled with warnings for future generations. Laura joined Emily in her research, working to decode the last of the alien messages. The final entry in Sophie's journal read, "We thought we were alone in the universe. We were wrong. The shadows are part of Earth, older than anything we can imagine. They are patient, and they are hungry. If you find this, remember, never awaken them." Years later, archaeologists stumbled upon the journals and the archives left behind by Emily and Laura. The warnings were clear, but as always, curiosity got the better of some. Deep beneath the surface, drills began to pierce the ancient stone once more. In the darkness, something stirred.